This Sunday, October 30th at 8 o'clock at Precious Blood Church at 200 Kenny Street, the Winnipeg Classical Guitar Society, in conjunction with Prairie Debut, will feature the Cicchillitti-Cowan Guitar Duo in a program that consists of the music of Debussy, Taillefer, Ravel, Montpole, and others. The Cicchillitti-Cowan Duo consists of two internationally award-winning guitarists, Adam Cicchillitti and Steve Cowan. And the music on this Saturday night's program will consist of music that has been arranged by the duo for two guitars. It is with a real pleasure that I welcome to our Classic 107 Zoom studios, Adam Cicchillitti and Steve Cowan. Hi, Adam and Steve. How's it going?
Hey, Chris. How you doing?
Good.
Hello. Glad to be here.
Mm-hmm. So the first question I want to sort of deal with is McGill. Steve, you're on faculty at McGill, and Adam, I was reading your biography on Analecca, on the Analecca website, and it said that you were finishing your doctorate in guitar at McGill. So
Correct.
There's a couple things going on here. Adam, did the pandemic affect your doctoral program? And Steve, how has the pandemic been for you working as a guitar teacher at McGill? Adam, maybe I'll start with you.
Well, I'm actually going to be graduating in June of next year, and I definitely took my time with the degree because I was awarded a grant from the provincial government to do my research. So as a result, the pandemic didn't really do much to affect it because I wanted to kind of take as much time as needed to do the research in order to benefit from the full financial help of the grant. And that financial help was extremely appreciated, especially in those times, of course. Mm-hmm. So really in all, after everything is said and done, I think it actually kind of helped because it gave me a little bit more time to be by myself and to really dig into the research side of the project that I'm working on.
Right, your dissertation.
Right, exactly. Well, in music, it's a little bit different. We don't have a full dissertation, and particularly in the performance side. We're tasked with putting together 3 recitals, a final paper, comprehensive exams where we put together bibliographies and we do a ton of research on those. But I have a lecture recital that's coming up in a number of months on the music of Robert Schumann. And so I'll be playing guitar with a singer. And so I've arranged this piece that was originally written for piano to the guitar, and it's something that I'm very familiar and comfortable with because of the work I've been doing with Steve. Our most recent album was basically an album of exclusively pieces that we arranged from piano to guitar, and as we'll probably maybe talk a little bit later, the guitar is just a wonderful bridge from classical music to more popular music, a way of making classical music more accessible to the general public because a lot of people just play guitar. They sit in their room, they play, they sing along. So we just take it to the nth degree and play the guitar more like a piano. But
Right. Steve, how has it been for you teaching at McGill? Is this academic year any different than last academic year? I'm presuming you're teaching in person this year, or?
Yes, and actually, even in the worst of it, which Montreal definitely had the worst of it with regards to restrictions and lockdowns, we were still allowed to teach in person, even throughout all last year. Mind you, with distance and with masks and at least private lessons. Most of the students' classes and ensembles were canceled. So I still gave my private lessons, but it was in a very sort of sad and desolate, empty building. This year, it's once again the private lessons are in person, but as are sort of ensembles and classes, and there's just many more people around, and the energy, the motivation is just totally different. The other big effect that it had was that you could always sort of audition for McGill and other programs via video without doing it live. But last year, as all the auditions were done online, and perhaps because people had more time to reflect on what they would want to do, maybe they want to go back to school, maybe they want to consider McGill, audition rates throughout all instruments were up something like 25%. So we had a huge number of new applicants, and this year there's just a lot more new students. So the pandemic in that sense was actually advantageous. Like I said, I think it gave people, from international students particularly, think, okay, I'm now on equal playing ground with everybody because we're all auditioning via tape. Whereas in the past, I think live auditions maybe have a slight advantage. And so that's been sort of a silver lining, I guess, to the whole thing. Yep.
Absolutely. So How did you two meet, and when did you guys decide to form a duo, and how long have you been performing together as the Cicchillitti-Cowan Duo? Steve?
We met through a mutual friend, actually, who I met at sort of a summer camp here in Quebec, and he studied with Adam. Adam and I never actually studied at the same place, but since I had been based in Montreal, Ottawa's close by, and the guitar communities here are pretty tight knit. So I met Adam through this friend, and this friend eventually sort of left music and pursued farming. And so I needed a new duo partner. And Adam and I, we also we were just crossing paths. Again, the guitar world is small at some festivals, and we were pretty much at the same level. We were the same age. We talked about the solo repertoire we had learned in our studies, and we had pretty much chose all the same pieces, which meant we had very similar musical tastes and interests. And I think it was 2015. Am I right, Adam? That when we did our first gig together.
Yeah, the gallery in Almont.
Yeah, and this was sort of, it wasn't necessarily with big plans. It was just kind of like, let's do a fun little gig together. But we pretty much right away had sort of the chemistry, and started to grow from there. So it's been about 6 years. Started slow, but once we got some new pieces written for us and some album projects going on, it's become pretty much our main focus. Would you say, Adam? Yeah.
I totally agree. You mentioned that we never studied together, but actually when I started my doctorate at McGill, Steve was in the process of finishing his. So there was a 2-year overlap between the two of us. And that was really advantageous because I was, even though I was living in Ottawa, I was traveling to Montreal every week, and Steve and I had that extra opportunity to have rehearsal time. So we were just playing together a lot. We were playing together in studio classes, meaning we would play in front of the other guitarists in the program. And we started concertizing more, touring. We had already been doing competitions together as soloists, but so we, like Steve mentioned, we had a lot of overlap in musical taste. And if you're going to learn all this incredibly complex music, you better have a passion for it, because you're going to spend a lot of time with it. And being with a person who is like-minded in that way, it really helps to be able to spend all those hours and devote your time to it,
Mm-hmm. The concert this Saturday night is put on by the Winnipeg Classical Guitar Society and Prairie Debut. Now, last week, I actually talked with a couple musicians who answered a call by Prairie Debut for their Close to Home series, a wonderful violinist and pianist. Is that how this concert came about? Like, was it Prairie Debut that approached you, or did you approach Prairie Debut? Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Adam?
So Prairie Debut, every year during the pandemic, the process has changed a little bit, but they put out a call to artists essentially, and so they'll have an application open, and it's a competitive application process where you submit videos, you submit your kind of outreach activities and what your kind of mindset is toward performance. And Steve and I were lucky enough to apply and be accepted into that program a number of years ago. And as of early as last year, we had a number of performances and 2 legs of tours that we were getting ready to do. And of course, the pandemic hit, and everybody out in the prairies had to cancel their live in-person concerts. So we're in the process of kind of recouping from those losses, picking up some of the concerts that didn't happen last year. And so we're doing a kind of hybrid format where we're doing some concerts in person, some concerts pre-recorded, and others live streamed. And it's kind of exciting because I think it's accelerated a little bit our interaction digitally with the public. Before this, we were exclusively playing in person, but now we're getting much, much more comfortable with live stream. And so we picked up this concert with the Winnipeg Guitar Society in collaboration with Prairie Debut, because we happen to know some people at the Winnipeg Guitar Society, and we got them in contact with Prairie Debut, had mentioned that we wanted to do a concert with them for a number of years, and Prairie Debut just took care of the rest for us. So
amazing. Yeah, it's such an amazing organization, Prairie Debut, and the Winnipeg Classical Guitar Society. The concert this Saturday night features largely music by French composers from the first half of the 20th century. And I understand most of the arrangements of this music were done by the two of you. Talk me through this. How does that work? Like, for example, the Ravel sonatine that you're going to be playing on Saturday night. It can't be just as simple as one guitar player takes a left hand and one guitar player takes a right hand. How does that work? Steve, you want to talk to that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'll give a little preamble, but Adam was the one actually the mastermind behind the Ravel arrangement, so he'll take over. But
Okay.
it's definitely not that simple. I mean, in some cases, in some textures, that is involved, but there's a lot of first of all, we have to consider key changes. Certain keys are much more comfortable on the guitar, namely those that correspond with the open strings. So I think Adam had to modulate this entire sonnetin to a different key. Then we had to sort of choose registers and maybe generally note omissions. You have to sort of omit certain things, but it's a tough process because you have to sort of as a musician think about, what is the essence of this moment? Is it the fact that this note lasts, or is it the fact that this note is in the harmony, giving it that different color? So there's
Right.
a lot of back and forth with regards to, is this getting this pianistic gesture as accurately as we can on our instrument. So Adam can take it a little bit further, but that's a starting point. Yeah.
Well, that's a really good starting point. You basically explained it very, very well. But the only thing I would say about your explanation, Stephen, is that you used a lot of musician jargon. So I don't know how many non-musicians are listening to this channel, but words like textures and pianistic and note omissions and all these things, they might come off as a little bit,
Academic.
academic
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
And it's actually a really important concept that Steve's talking about, because when he says the word texture, it just means there are a lot of notes,
Right.
right? When you're playing a piano arrangement, one guitar, because our fingers are always kind of crossing over each other and like getting in the way of each other, we can't do everything. So we have to make decisions about what is absolutely essential and what can be removed.
Right.
And that is the art of arrangement in its bare essence. So, like Steve said, the open strings of the guitar. Why do we like open strings? Because we don't have to put our fingers on the strings, right? So if
They're very resonant.
they're very resonant, and they allow us to seamlessly transition from one fingering to another. And so if we choose, Steve said the word keys, but I think more people are familiar with the word scales. If we choose scales that correspond with more open strings, then we have more possibilities naturally. And of course, the fact that we're two guitars makes up for the fact that we only have technically one hand plucking notes. Now it's really like we have two hands like a piano.
Right. What about the Harp Sonata? How did that one work? And I mean, how well does harp work for guitar? I mean, I imagine it would work fairly well, but again, who did that arrangement?
Again, that was myself. As Steve took care of the Mampu arrangements on the album, and I took care of the Taifar and the Ravel. And it worked really, really well. The harp was much easier to translate to guitar than piano, by virtue of the fact that it's a plucked string instrument. So the way that notes are configured it's much more similar. And yeah, I heard that piece on CBC Radio 2 a number of years back, and I showed it to Steve, and he was like, yes. And we just went for it. It was as easy as that. I didn't have to do any convincing. I didn't have to twist his arm.
Nice, nice. So the program does consist of composers from the first half of the 20th century. What is it about this time period that attracted you to them? Steve, you went like, and why did you focus on this particular kind of literature?
It's hard to say why, but I mean, I've just in school we learn. I mean, of course, there's many different traditions in music, but a lot of sort of styles can be explained as maybe a little more French or a little more German. Of course, it's not that simple, but I've just always found myself more attracted to the French style of playing and of composing. And I don't really want to get into too many words why. It was just sort of my intuitive sort of feeling towards this music. And these particular composers, there's an intimacy, there's a lyricism, and there's just such rich harmonies, which I think we are both really, really attracted to. That the music was getting more complex than it was in the 19th century, so you get a lot more beautiful, almost what I would say as a 21st century living person is like jazz-like harmonies.
Yes.
But a lot of this sort of predated jazz in a way. But mind you, they were sort of coexisting and learning from one another.
Exactly.
But that would be the sort of the language where I first heard these harmonies, probably growing up, and then I hear them used in this really well-crafted way in these compositions. And again, I just think. We naturally thought it would translate well to the guitar, and I may be biased, but I think we were right.
Yeah, I mean, Ravel is a composer that pops in my mind. He's just such a master of creating these amazing textures and sound worlds. Even just from the piano, it is really, really something. And I think for myself, as a fan of French music as well, it's one of the things that really draws me to his music as well. The one piece on Saturday night's program that is sort of one of these things it's not like the other is the Harry Staphylakis piece, Focus. Harry Staphylakis was the composer in residence here with the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra. How did you guys find out about this piece? And can you tell us what it's like?
Yeah, we commissioned it. Harry is a good friend of mine from back in my bachelor degree days at McGill. I did my bachelor in McGill from 2007 to 2009, and he was doing his master's degree at the same time at McGill. And so that's when I met him. We found out our common love of heavy metal together at that time. He's an electric guitarist. He's quite an adept electric guitarist as well. He's got some videos out there that would blow your mind. And so a lot of his music is heavily influenced by the electric guitar and by heavy metal. And if you had him as a composer in residence, you would definitely have heard some of those textures and those idioms appearing in his music. Yeah. A lot of driving rhythms, a lot of kind of riff-based music, because he does kind of always go back to that original influence. And so in 2015, Steve and I met up with him. We had a nice meal together, and we talked about this kind of conception of taking metal and putting it onto classical guitars. At that time, he had already written a couple of pieces for classical guitar. One was with string quartet, and another one was a solo piece, but this was his first duo piece. And you're going to hear in the piece a lot of electric guitar techniques. We actually, at one point, we use our index finger like a pick, and we just chug. So chugging is like dun 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 dun, dun, you know, that type of texture. We literally do that, but on classical.
Exactly. Yeah.
It sounds like it's going to be great. The title, Focus, where does focus come from?
Where does the title come from?
Well, our original idea was our focus, because it actually became the title track of our first album together, and it was about our focus on Canadian composers. That's what we said. But I don't really know what Harry's original impetus for the word focus was, to be honest.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I'm actually this morning I was practicing another piece by Harry that he is writing for us now for two guitars and string ensemble, string orchestra that we'll be playing in the spring. And in the description he says to play it sort of metronomically, sort of rhythmic and focused throughout. And I feel like maybe this was his like sort of musical intention, is that again we're as classical musicians we're playing this music that sort of pushes, pulls, and breathes, and Harry's like, let's just take classical music and let's just be it precise and almost machine-like and focused with the rhythm. Perhaps that's what he was thinking about. I could be putting words in his mind, but I found it interesting that he used the word focused on our new piece, and it's very different, but also very, very similar in some other ways.
Yeah, it takes Focus, the original piece, and just explodes it to a whole other level, because you add 13 string instruments on top of the two guitars.
Right.
Your potential is just that much greater.
A good portion of Saturday night's concert makes use of material that is found on your album, Intimate Impressions. And for our Classic 107 listeners, you might have heard us here at the station play tracks off this CD. The whole disc is phenomenal. It's just a great, great disc.
Thank you, Chris.
Steve and Adam, if people want to download this disc, and Adam, your other CD, Cancion, and then the Focus album, where can they go to download tracks from the disc or the disc itself?
You can find it on any digital streaming platform that you'd like. If you're subscribed to Google Music now, YouTube Music, or Apple Music, Amazon, you can find it on the Naxos website. It's just everywhere. And of course, if you're old school like Steve and I, and you still have CD players in your cars, you can buy physical copies, because they're still out there. CDs are still out there, guys, and it's a beautiful thing. I still love opening the little booklet and You know, it's the way I grew up, of course. So
Yeah,
I
me
think
too.
I think the best thing to do would, I mean, Adam said everything correctly, but I think the Analecta, the label website, has sort of little blurbs about the albums and also links to all the different streaming platforms as well as where to get a physical copy. So
boom.
it's all laid out there, and you can sort of make your choice whichever platform you prefer. So that's the Analecta website, and if you search either one of our names, the albums should come up.
Yep.
And again, for our listeners, the repertoire on the disc, and a lot of it, like I say, is going to be performed on Saturday night, is just amazing. So this is a concert that you should definitely see. The concert is happening this Saturday night, and it sounds like it's going to be amazing. Once again, it's happening at Precious Blood Church at 200 Kenny Street, which, by the way, is a great venue for classical guitar. So, Stephen, Adam, I'm sure this is going to be a wonderful concert this Saturday night. Thanks for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thanks for having us. It's really an honor to be here.
Our
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Chris.